can't tell the folks disappeared.
And you showed up, as opposed to somebody who, well,
Hey, thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you for coming.
okay, so, well, it's 7 o'clock. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call. State your name and your intention. No. So Huntley's here.
Here.
Mr. Mason. Mr. Benish.
Who's here?
And Dave. Blank here. And you. So we have, and I'm here, James Gleason. So. Mr. Matesky here. So, we have all members present. So this is a continuation, and I want to apologize for having this drag on because of my absence at the last meeting. At the original meeting, we postponed a decision until we had a chance to look at the property. I believe we've all had a chance to get up there, or if we thought we needed to. So I think it's any other information that you would like to add to what we had before?
Actually, we're in the part of the process where we are just continuing our discussion and voting, I think.
Okay. Yep.
But
Okay. So, well then let's get to our points here. Just go ahead and vote at this point, because I think we've all got some time to muddle through this.
Yeah, I just, because I did talk to the building inspector yesterday, and I talked to Burr today. It's been a hard decision for me, and I did go up and look through all the properties, but it's been difficult.
Yeah, and I went by and looked at property and the surrounding properties, and I talked to Burr Phillips about a week ago or so. Do you want to explain how we vote on this thing? Is that...
well, I mean, the first test would be that the variance will not be contrary to public interest. And that and the second criteria are often asked us to decide whether or not the variance would alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And number two, would the variance threaten the public health, safety, or welfare? So we should vote on the first test.
Can just just to keep my mind in line, can we just read the 5 tests or the 6
All
tests?
5 of them?
Yeah, just 1, 2, and then we can go back and start
Okay.
with the first one.
Number 1, the variance will not be contrary to the public interest.
Okay.
Number 2, the spirit of the ordinance is observed. Number 3, substantial justice is done. Number 4, the values of the surrounding properties are not diminished. And number 5, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship.
Okay. And as a way of explaining, so that the people that are here understand, you would need a yes vote, or at least 3 positive votes on each one of those articles. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And then a final vote.
And even,
Well, when you vote,
If you vote,
well, no, you still have to take,
if
because it could be, if you have a yes, you can have different people saying yes on different tests. So you must take the overall vote to approve or deny the
okay,
variance.
all right, great, okay, thank you.
Well, does the board want me to read the
Yep.
arguments that they presented
Oh,
originally?
no, well, I've read it.
I've read
Okay, I just want,
I mean, I'm not for it, I mean.
You know, would it be of any interest for me to recount my conversation?
I would like to hear what Burr had to say.
Okay. I asked Burr, you know, he looked at the thing and asked him if all the land was used, was there any land that was usable that hadn't been considered? He said, no, they got it all. He felt that there was, not that it was particularly relevant, but there was a little miscalculation on the initial thing that was submitted to him. And he said he didn't think that, that the lot would qualify for 4 bedrooms, even if the bedroom were in the house, because he said, I think there's a miscalculation, and, you know, they get that impression, they had the impression that it would be okay perhaps, but it, you know, didn't qualify. He said in conversation, this is just conversation, that there are some new designs, septic designs, and approaches to septic systems, which if one could be used, because the idea of these designs is to put the people building the system in a situation where they don't have to, they get the same value of the system as if they had more land. And that if one of those would work and could be designed, that might be an approach. He didn't think there was any way that the lot could qualify. He also pointed out, I discussed with him the idea, because I've always been of the impression, which turns out is probably a wrong impression. I've had one or two of those in my life. That the reason we had the ordinance that we had, which was stiffer than the state ordinance, was because we wanted to limit construction on small lots. We wanted the lots to be bigger, and at the time we were concerned about our 2-acre zoning, which we thought would be considered snob zoning, and at the time there was a lot of litigation going on about snob zoning. Burr had, you know, that was not his remembrance, and he pointed out that we've modified the ordinance at least once, maybe twice, and brought it up to higher current standards, higher than the state's current standards, but their current standards anyhow. And he said that that he had been talking with the Lower Bartlett Water Precinct, and they're finding, they do the state standards, by the way, and they're finding that they're getting groundwater readings which are concerning. There's more stuff coming into the groundwater than they would like, and they're investigating installation of a sewer system. They're talking about a $49 million bond to cover that. Not happening tomorrow, but they're concerned about the rising presence of chemicals that we're trying to keep out of the water.
What kind of chemicals, nitrates?
Nitrates, yeah. And he said that, that was the value of Jackson's approach, because it was a better approach, better opportunity to keep nitrates down. So that's what Burr had to say, as I recall. And I drove up and looked at Burr's parents' property and the other properties, and I have to say, I didn't see anything unusual about their property. Everybody there has got kind of the same situation. You've got Steve, you've got, like, the people above you, I don't know where the hell they put their stuff. I mean, it's,
It's hopefully on the other side.
is it? Well, in any event, so I didn't see anything unusual or unique, and that's what Bert had to say. So, okay.
Well, the whole purpose of what the soil scientists of Northern New England, Society of Soil Scientists of Northern New England,
I didn't want to try to say that.
SSSNE, was really to manage, the formulas they use is really to manage the level of nitrates in the groundwater, and so the soil size and the soil slope are all important parts of that calculation. Not just the size, but I mean, they're also looking at, it's basically looking at groundwater recharge as well.
That's,
So I've never felt that, I mean, and that's obviously a scientific society that includes people from the state as well as people in private practice. It's, I don't know why the state has not upgraded their standards, but we're not the only town that depends on the SSS and the formulas. So why we have it, is, I don't think is much of an issue because the towns adopted it in their wisdom. And that the state has not, well, they have not. I don't know why. One can guess, but there you go. I think as far as the variance, several of the tests talk about the public interest, and in fact, the unnecessary hardship test that Dave was mentioning is not only that somehow the lot is somehow unique or special, but it also means the second part of that same test is it's unfair to the, I'll paraphrase now, unfair to the lot owners to apply a particular zoning division, ordinance provision to that lot, because whatever is unique about it doesn't have any connection to the particular rationale for the paragraph in the zoning ordinance. For example, you could have setback or height restrictions, arguably say to preserve a view. But if the lot, not that we have one here, but the lot were on an island or on a peninsula, you could argue that the application of setbacks or height restrictions on a house on the island to protect views was unfair because there were no neighbors whose views had to be protected. So it's not only that the lot is unique, but that there is no relationship between the provision of the ordinance and that uniqueness. I think here the issue is the size and the slope of the lot, and that's very clearly tied to this part of the zoning ordinance on minimum lot sizes, because that's the whole rationale, that you need a larger lot to recharge the water and cut down on nitrate intrusion. If it is a small lot, or is a very steeply sloped lot.
Or has weird soil.
Or has bad soil, yes.
Yeah.
This lot, by the way, there's no use being made of the steeply sloped section. So it's not, and they weren't proposing to use the steeply sloped
Right.
section, but there's just not enough of the right kind of ground.
No, but the formula also, as I understand it, provides penalties, or it's a less generous formula if the land has a certain slope versus others.
Yes,
Right.
that's true, but I don't
Right.
think, well, certainly there's a slope, so it's probably taken into consideration. Also, the type of ground that's there, the
Yeah,
type
I
of
mean,
dirt.
But yes, those are all slope, soil type, and slope, soil type,
And square footage.
and other big things. But the formula just looks at the whole lot. It doesn't look at where the system's actually going to be placed. It just is trying to measure the whole lot,
And
and
that's what they did.
and on that basis they failed. So my concern or my issue is both on the uniqueness. I think there is a very substantial relationship between the size and slope issues with this provision of the ordinance, and I think on the even the being contrary to the public interest, which that's a two-part test that deals with whether the variance threaten public health, safety, or welfare. Arguably, this variance would affect the public health. Because that's, again, the whole point of this ordinance, it's groundwater.
I think the next section of that is, it seems to me to be more on point than what you're talking about, but I guess they're both on point. The next section talks about
The spirit of the
the
ordinance.
spirit of the ordinance, and certainly the spirit of the ordinance is to prevent what's happening in Bartlett from
Yep.
happening. And that would not, when you're saying, okay, we're going to waive this requirement, then you could just, that's not the spirit of the ordinance.
So I suggest we kind of go through the criteria and vote. Do
Yeah, okay.
you want to describe them, or John, or what?
No,
Go ahead.
all right, so, I guess one thing that, contrary to public interest, I think it's a tough subject for me, in that, what is in the public interest is the fact that they have what's currently on site, a septic. There's not a septic system, a septic tank, and dry well. Is it in the public interest to have that replaced? Yes, I think. But is it in the public interest to have it replaced and add another dwelling unit? I think the discussion also in the first meeting was that relative to the calculations and whatnot, for the ADU, it's not strictly a bedroom. It's probably going to be a toilet. Going a toilet, bedroom, and possibly kitchen. There's no restrictions. So it's not just like you're adding one bedroom to the main building. In fact, what Frank, you were saying was that even then it wouldn't, the calculations wouldn't qualify for that to be fitting. So I don't know that it's contrary to public interest, but I don't know that it's to the public benefit either. Because if we start, look at the other lots that are here, bordering and whatnot, and they're all small, most of them anyway. So if we're setting a precedent by allowing somebody to build an additional dwelling unit on a site just because would prefer to, as opposed to if their septic system is antiquated, outdated, and not a healthy recharge system, letting them replace that, I don't see that there would be any problem with that.
Let me just interject and say that what we do never sets a precedent. So there are no precedents set by the ZBA.
All right.
Each case is on its own, and nobody can go back and say, well, you did this
Did
here.
that for there. Well, so then why don't we just go one by one and take a vote on each of these items.
Right.
So, not contrary, not contrary to the public interest. Does it meet that criteria?
I'm not sure how you're asking that. Why don't we ask all those in favor of deciding that the variance, well, how many are in favor of the variance, how many are okay determining that the variance will not be contrary to public interest?
Will not be.
Because that's the test. Will the variance be not to grant this variance, we're gonna have to find that
It will not.
granting the variance will not be contrary to the public interest.
So the ayes would be.
Would be, yes, it's not contrary
Yeah,
to
would
public
be, yeah.
interest.
Okay, so, let's take a vote then, if we can start that out.
So a yes is to accept and a no is to not accept, correct?
Yes.
If you say no, you're saying it is against the public interest. Okay, if you say yes,
You're saying it's not against the
it's
public
not against the
interest.
public interest.
Oh, well, I'm gonna have to say no.
No,
No,
No?
It's very difficult for me to do this.
yeah,
And no.
I agree.
Okay, the second test is, well, the spirit of the ordinance is observed, and I'll add that it's been suggested by none other than, I think, the Supreme Court, and certainly by our former counsel, Peter Melia, that we should be answering the second question the same as the first.
yeah,
It's basically asking the same question.
right. I like the way the second part of that asks the question. I could skip the first.
Okay, so all those in favor of finding that the spirit of the ordinance would be observed if we granted the variance?
So,
No.
Vote.
No,
Oh, no, it's just like, the way it was read, I was,
okay, so, well, to
So
put
it's
it
no.
in my terms, would approving this variance fit the spirit of the ordinance?
no.
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 I wish they could word it so it's easier to,
That's the Supreme Court for you.
That's why we have Frank here.
So the third test is substantial justice is done. And that is any loss to the individual, in this case it'd be the applicants, is not outweighed by gain to the general public. So we have to find that, basically we're asking, by denying them the variance, that is, certainly is a loss to them, because they can't do what they want to do, but it's outweighed by the general public interest in this area.
Okay, so how do you want to phrase that question?
All in favor that if we grant this variance, substantial justice would be done. So voting yes would say we want to grant the variance, and no would be let me rephrase that.
No.
Yes, well, that's the way it's been phrased by the Supreme Court. So by saying yes, we find substantial justice is done, we're saying that the gain to the individual is not outweighing the general loss to the general public here.
Just, if you can phrase it so we can vote yes or no, that would be good.
All in favor of finding that by granting a variance, substantial justice is done?
And this is substantial justice to the applicants.
That's right.
Yes. Well, let me be more specific then. Let me just be more specific.
So you're doing it, not me.
All those in favor of finding that the loss to these individuals by us not granting the variance, that the loss to these individuals is outweighed by a gain in the general public interest.
Okay,
You try it. It's been a year since we've done these.
All this complicated too. Well, if I can just go back to the initial argument, so substantial justice, no, the applicant's argument, by limiting the septic plan to 3 bedrooms in this instance would be a significant hardship for the Ross parents. If we were to say that they have 4,
It'd be so much easier if we had the list of
The
things.
list is right here. There.
Oh, there it is.
but what I was getting at, let's to look at this another way. If, for instance, they had a 4-bedroom dwelling
I don't
on
think
that.
it's relevant whether it's for or not.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Well, what I'm trying to do is say, okay, but their argument is that it's a significant hardship for them limiting it to 3 bedrooms.
No, we're not on the hardship test. We're on
I mean, justice.
substantial justice.
Justice, but this is part of the argument in there. I mean, these overlap, as we said. I don't see that denying the variance would be a lack of limiting justice to them.
Yeah, what it says here is the Supreme Court said that substantial justice means any loss to the individual that is not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice. Well, in this case, I would argue that the gain to the general public outweighs the loss because the general public has to drink water.
Yeah.
And the
That's-
water, the idea is to keep the water drinkable. And we can see that there are situations developing where it is not going to be drinkable. And we've got a more stringent ordinance, and that is to the benefit of the public.
So you want to phrase the question for us? Then we can
Oh,
vote?
I'd be happy to. Let's see. Who feels, if anyone, who feels that the loss to the individual is not outweighed by a gain to the general public? And that would be a yes. I feel that way. That would vote for the variance. If you were to say no, I don't feel that the loss to the individual is.
If you say no, you mean, what you're saying is that the benefit to the general public outweighs
That's
the
what,
loss to the individual.
that's what
That's what you're
I'm
saying.
saying.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So, in that criteria of substantial justice, how would we vote? How would you vote?
I guess I'd have to say no.
No.
No, no.
No, okay, so it's all no.
This is the toughest one we've had.
Well, it's the only one we haven't been able to allow, actually.
Yeah.
We're usually rolling right out of here.
And what's the next one?
Okay, the next one is unnecessary hardship. And, this is owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in this area, there is no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to this property. So, all those in favor of deciding that the Ross parent would suffer unnecessary hardship if we deny this variance.
Before we vote, are we,
That's something else. Oh, I'm doing anything out of order. No, I'm not.
no, okay, just wanted to make sure.
So again, the test is there's no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purposes and the specific application of that provision to this property. And I move that we find that there is a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose ordinance provision and its application to this property. In other words, a yes would mean we're in favor of denying variance.
Yes is a favor you're denying.
Yes?
I've got to go yes.
Yeah.
I hate to.
I do too, but I would say yes too.
But yay on that for me.
Yep. And then the next test is the value of surrounding properties will not be
Did we get a vote on the last one?
yeah,
No?
Yeah,
What are we voting, yes?
yeah, it's yes.
Yes, 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 yes.
I don't think the value of the surrounding properties, I think, has been presented as there's certainly not gonna be a negative effect on. There wouldn't be a negative effect if you had granted the variance.
I would agree with that, and in part because we had none of the neighbors were saying, yes, my property's gonna be hurt.
Right,
And we've had that before. So, in this case, I move that we find that the values of surrounding properties are not diminished by granting the variance.
I agree, yes.
I say yes. That's a yes?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
A yay for me, so that's fine again.
And then, and that's it, that's all five. Right? We got
That's
five
it.
votes?
Yes,
Okay, so I move that we deny the variance, of course.
Did we do this, the rule enforcement?
Yes,
We did.
yes.
When did we do that?
You just told me we voted. That's not necessary hardship. No fair and substantial relationship
I-
exists between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision.
Yeah, so
Okay,
you did all five, so it's just as property value and necessary hardship.
Okay.
So I move that we deny the variance applications.
Second.
All in favor?
Of denying.
Yes.
All in favor of denying. Aye.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
hoping Kevin would give us silver bullet on that, but
yeah.
it's all the property. You ride up the road, everybody up there. And I know some of them on the right before you get to your house, the septic's way down in the back, but they have the property and I can't imagine the head that's going down that bank.
Well, I'm sorry, but that's pretty much
Well,
what
I
we
guess I
can
have
do.
to say that you guys have made it very clear.
Thank you for going up and taking a look at it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
But believe me, it wasn't, because, you know, it's when you know somebody's coming in and they're telling the truth. You like the people, you've known them for years. This is the one time I didn't want to be on this board.
Yeah.
No, no, you guys do a good job.
Well, there's
You can
actually
only
many
do what you
times
can
I'd
do,
rather not
but
be on
I
the
would
board.
far prefer to allow it.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to allow it than to not allow it. A lot more pleasant.
Are we allowed to ask you what we are allowed to do? Because
No.
I do need a septic system and I do need a new garage.
I think that's between Burr and Kevin.
And you can certainly put a septic system in, there's no question you can put a septic system in. As a matter of fact, because you haven't put it in, you might talk to somebody about a different kind of system, something that is new and has been designed, and you might find
Something, excuse me, something that's different than what
Ron.
Ron, you might.
Yes.
Because this is standard, you need X number of feet, and Burr mentioned to me specifically that there were some systems that had been designed, that were designed for this kind of application where you didn't have enough space, and they take
You
less
get more out
space.
of it.
And you might still need a variance, but if you were to come here with a system, my guess would be, if you were to come here with a system that was designed and everybody agreed it could do the job, then it would not be very difficult to get
If
it.
it were the
But
job,
that-
then they wouldn't need a variance.
Well, I think that they might still need a variance because we have we don't have a.
We don't have,
ordinance
we don't have a
that
regulation
looks
that
at those
reflects this
systems.
new system, according to Burr.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, then okay.
Yeah. So
That's-
if you ask
Well,
for a
then
variance.
the planning board
let's
needs
just be
to-
clear, this is, our role here is only to say yes to the variance and no to a variance, or
Yeah.
somehow interpret the zoning ordinance. And it would not be fair to people involved, especially Burr and Kevin on the front lines, for us to tell you what we think they might do.
Well,
But
I'm
you
not
can.
saying, thank you. I'm not saying what they might do. I'm simply saying that if
You should ask
somebody
them.
came with a scientifically designed system that everyone agreed was going to do the job that it was intended to do, and
Protect the public.
they, on the front line, had to deny it because we have a regulation that says, to have a septic system to do this, you need this much land, and they don't have it, that they would have to come for variance.
So you're saying if they came with a new system that provided the same nitrate infiltration standards and groundwater recharge
Right.
that our zoning ordinance assumes is taking place, then we might favorably consider that variance.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, but
Yeah, and if that happened, I
I'm
would
not
say
saying
that the
I
planning
don't
board needs,
speak quite as well as you do.
then the building, and then when they write the building permit, they need to take it into account then, and we should never even hear it. Right.
Well, no,
they can.
that's probably not true, because the building inspector has to follow the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance may say, assumes, the.
The old style system.
Yeah.
Then, then the
And-
planning
but-
board needs to update
Yeah,
the,
but if the.
zoning ordinance,
You're right,
yeah.
and since you're on the planning board and you're talking about what you're doing, because I read the
Yeah.
minutes last month.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that should be on your agenda for next year. In terms of updating the ordinance, if Burr can provide what
We
the,
really can't.
Kevin discussed that with me. He thought Burr had, but Burr didn't bring it up today, when I was talking.
In Massachusetts, they got this Title V thing where you sell a piece of property, it becomes a big problem, and they've got all kinds of systems that are being designed to satisfy reaching the Title V,
Yeah.
getting the Title V.
but I think, at least my perception of there's some kind of new system that still achieves all the objectives that are embedded in our ordinance, which assumes the kind of the existing technology, then that would be fair to look at it, because whenever, then there's no, then you can avoid the argument of, somehow this is not following the spirit of the ordinance.
Right.
And-
Exactly.
and it's not in the public interest.
That's my
Yeah.
point, that's
Yeah.
my point.
But, proving or being able to reach that conclusion is going to take some evidence, I think,
Yeah,
from
you-
Burr
sure.
or somebody.
You would have to have,
So the real crux of the matter was that obviously the ADU took it over the edge.
Well, I think what Dave said a little bit earlier is there was an error in your septic design calculations, and even the fourth bedroom, even a four-bedroom house
Yeah, not an accessory
would not
apartment.
have, would not have qualified.
that's what I understood.
So, so if I understand what Dave said, if you come back, you could build a system, my understanding is that you would be able to build a in a traditional system for a three-bedroom house.
Mhm.
It's that fourth bedroom or accessory dwelling unit that, yeah, that
Tips it off
Doesn't-
the edge.
So does that include a barn with no bedroom or kitchen, but with a utility sink? I mean, it's all hypothetical at this point.
If you put a utility, speaking off the cuff here, if you put a utility sink in your barn, I don't think
That has anything to do with it.
I don't think it would be, anybody would care.
If it's just a sink and not a toilet and a shower.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it was, what, 3.5?
Well, that's what they said, and I guess that's a question. as
So
to-
the sink wouldn't be,
Yeah. It's done on bedrooms
yeah.
Yeah, it's bedrooms.
or dwelling units.
Yeah, if you decided to put an extra sink in your house, for instance, were they gonna tell you you can't have another sink?
Mhm.
No, of course not, because it's done on bedrooms or dwelling units.
Well, you're probably not necessarily increasing the load either.
Well, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm telling you that
You're
it's
diverting
not relevant.
diverting it to another source, but
Well,
the
it's-
same amount of people are in there.
Well, yeah, it's all based on bedrooms being translated into average family size that are assumed in the alley. So you have a number of bedrooms.
What do they do for like a ski house?
They follow the same.
These ski clubs.
Same-
You got
same-
2 bedrooms and each one has 6
No, you know,
6 bunks in it.
if you pay attention to our STR stuff here now, you get your septic system, that you've got to, say it's a 3-bedroom system,
Yeah.
you're then allowed to have 2 people per bedroom plus 2 people, and that's all you can rent for. You can't rent to 16 people. That's what you can get.
But like the Eskimos and,
Well, I don't know what that
Well,
is. Maybe
I
their
think
septic
the
system
issue
takes
is
it.
that everybody, including a house with a cistern, is grandfathered.
yeah,
But as soon as they try to do anything with that property,
yeah.
and, if their septic system ever failed,
They'd have to.
yeah.
No, I
It'd be a
had,
deep shit.
I had this before, but, basically, I wasn't even thinking until you brought it up, but, because septic system's judged on bedrooms. Now, if you had a barn with no bedroom, you could have a complete bathroom out there.
Well, I guess you could have a bathroom.
Sure.
You could have a bathroom.
Well, up to the point of,
As long as nobody can live there,
Yeah.
nobody can sleep there, I guess you could have a
I mean,
bedroom.
let's say it's being used as an office,
Yeah.
where you could justifiably see the need for but if there's ever somebody sleeping up there, then you've
Now you-
defrauded the town.
Yeah.
Not
Oh,
that-
I realize.
Not that people haven't done that. There have been a lot of libraries and dens out there that seem to have closets.
Well, there's other solutions too. I know that like Phil Davies in his place, he had an office over his garage and he had an electric toilet in there, one of those
Yeah, well.
incinerator type.
And it all comes down to, again, our zoning ordinance and the SSSNE is all based on assumed family sizes based on the number of bedrooms.
Septic tank is fixtures, though,
Yeah,
as far as the size of it.
yeah. I suggest we call the meeting to a close
Mhm.
and prepare someplace if necessary.
Make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh,
Thank
I am
you.
sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.